Thank you for watching Living Word Media. If this lesson bless you, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to subscribe to Living Word Media. Thanks again for watching. Stay rooted and walk good. Welcome to Living Word Media Sunday School. I'm Pastor Eustace Duffus. If this lesson blessed you, please like, share, and subscribe to Living Word Media. Tell a friend to tell a friend about Living Word Media. Thanks for joining us. Stay rooted and walk good.
What if obeying authority isn't really about government, but about who you truly belong to? Jesus says in Gospel of Mark chapter 12 verse 17 to give Caesar what is his, and God what is his. But what if you've separated the two when God never did? Here's the tension. You claim God, but resist authority. You value freedom, but avoid responsibility. And here's the shock. According to Epistle to the Romans chapter 13 and First Epistle of Peter chapter 2, how you respond to authority reveals who you actually serve. So right now, are you submitted to God, or just selective? And what is it costing your witness and your soul? These passages were written during a time when God's people lived under Roman rule, a system often marked by heavy taxation, political control, and at times persecution. In Mark chapter 12 verse 17, Jesus is confronted by religious leaders trying to trap him with a political question about paying taxes to Caesar. Instead of choosing sides, he reveals a deeper truth. Earthly authority exists, but ultimate authority belongs to God. Later, the Apostle Paul writes to believers in Rome, the very center of imperial power. In Romans chapter 13, he teaches that governing authorities are ordained by God, not because they are perfect, but because God is sovereign over all systems. Believers were called to live as law-abiding citizens, not out of fear, but as an expression of obedience to God. Similarly, Peter writes to Christians scattered under pressure and persecution. In 1 Peter chapter 2, he instructs them to submit to human authority for the Lord's sake, showing that their conduct could silence critics and reflect God's character. Together, these teachings reveal a consistent message. Even in imperfect systems, God calls his people to live with honor, responsibility, and submission, not as blind loyalty to man, but as a reflection of their allegiance to him. Mark chapter 12 verse 17, KJV, and Jesus answering said unto them, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. Jesus is confronted with a trap: choose Rome or choose God. But he refuses the false choice and reveals a deeper truth. There are responsibilities to earthly authority, but ultimate ownership belongs to God. Here's the contrast. Caesar has authority over coins. God has authority over you. The hidden truth is unsettling. You can give external obedience to systems while withholding internal surrender from God. The coin bears Caesar's image, but humanity bears God's image. So the real issue isn't money, it's identity. The shock? Jesus doesn't reject civic responsibility, he elevates spiritual accountability. You can pay taxes and still be out of alignment with God. This creates immediate tension. What if I've been giving God less than what already belongs to him? Because the command is not just to give, it's to return. Another question presses deeper. Am I selective in my obedience, honoring God in some areas while reserving others for myself? Because partial surrender feels safe, but it's still resistance. And here's the internal conflict. I want control, but I claim God's authority. Both cannot rule at the same time. This is a right now decision. Evaluate what belongs to God: your life, your choices, your allegiance. Stop separating what God has already claimed. Don't just give God a portion, give him ownership. The coin had Caesar's image, so it belonged to him. But you bear God's image, so you belong to him. So here's the question you can't escape. Are you giving God what is his, or holding back what was never yours to keep? Because what you refuse to surrender may be the very thing revealing who truly has authority in your life. Romans chapter 13 verse 1, KJV. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there is no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Paul makes a bold and unsettling claim. All authority exists because God allowed it. Not because every leader is righteous, but because God is sovereign. This reframes everything. Authority is not ultimate, it is appointed. Here's the contrast. Human authority may be flawed. God's authority is absolute. The hidden truth. Submission to authority is ultimately a reflection of submission to God. This doesn't mean agreement with everything. It means recognizing God's hand over structure and order. The shock? Even imperfect systems exist under God's control. That challenges our instinct to resist when we disagree. This creates immediate tension. Can I submit to authority I don't fully agree with? Because submission is easy when it aligns with preference, but difficult when it confronts it. Another question presses deeper. Do I resist authority because of injustice, or because of independence? Because not all resistance is righteous. And here's the internal conflict. I want God in control, but I struggle when His control doesn't match my expectations. This is a right now posture check. Align your response. Respect authority as part of God's order. Avoid rebellion rooted in pride. Seek wisdom when navigating tension, not reaction. Because how you respond to authority reflects your trust in God. Authority may be human, but its source is divine. And your response reveals more than your opinion, it reveals your trust. So here's the question you must answer. Are you resisting authority, or resisting God's order behind it? Because how you respond is shaping more than behavior, it's shaping your alignment with Him. Romans chapter 13 verses 6-7, KJV, 6. For this cause pay ye tribute also. For they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. 7. Render therefore to all their dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Paul moves from principle to practice. Submission is not theoretical, it's visible. Paying taxes, giving honor, showing respect, these are not just civic duties, they are spiritual responses. He even calls governing authorities God's ministers, meaning they serve a role within God's order, even if imperfectly. Here's the contrast. You may not agree with authority, but you are still called to honor and respond rightly. The hidden truth. Obedience in practical areas reveals deeper spiritual alignment. It's easy to claim loyalty to God in worship, but harder to demonstrate it in everyday responsibilities. The shock? Something as ordinary as paying dues becomes a reflection of your relationship with God. This creates immediate tension. Do I separate my spiritual life from my everyday responsibilities? Because Paul doesn't allow that separation. Another question presses deeper. Am I faithful in what seems small, or only in what feels spiritual? Because consistency reveals character. And here's the internal conflict. I want spiritual recognition, but resist practical obedience. This is a right now alignment moment. Respond with integrity. Fulfill obligations honestly. Show respect even when it's difficult. Treat everyday actions as spiritual expressions. Because faith is not just declared, it is demonstrated. What seems ordinary is actually spiritual. What feels small reveals something bigger. So here's the question you can't ignore. Are you honoring God only in words, or in the way you live every day? Because how you handle the visible is revealing what's happening in the invisible. Romans chapter 13 verse 8, KJV, Owe no man anything, but to love one another. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. Paul now shifts from external obligations to the deepest responsibility of all, love. After speaking about taxes, honor, and duty, he reveals something greater. Love is the ongoing debt that never ends. Here's the contrast. Financial debts can be paid off. The debt of love is never finished. The hidden truth. True submission to God is not just seen in obedience, it is fulfilled in love. You can meet every external requirement and still miss the heart of God if love is absent. The shock? Love is not optional, it is the evidence that everything else is real. Without it, obedience becomes empty. This creates deep tension. Am I doing what's right, but missing what matters most? Because it's possible to follow rules and still lack love. Another question presses deeper. Do I treat love as a feeling, or as a responsibility? Because Paul presents it as a debt. And here's the internal conflict. I want to be seen as right, but God is asking me to be loving. This is a right now shift in focus. Prioritize love. Choose love even when it's difficult. Treat people with dignity and care. Let your obedience be shaped by compassion. Because love completes what rules alone cannot. You can fulfill duties and still fall short. But when love is present, everything changes. So here's the question you must face. Are you living right, but failing to love? Because the one thing you can never pay off is the very thing God requires you to live out daily. The blueprint: don't let anyone treat you like a rough draft. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 13, KJV, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king, as supreme. Peter begins with a command that immediately creates tension: submit yourselves. Not because authority is always right, but for the Lord's sake. This shifts the focus from people to God. Submission is not ultimately about the system, it's about your relationship with Him. Here's the contrast. Submission feels like loss of control, but spiritually, it reflects trust in God's control. The hidden truth. How you respond to authority is not just a civic issue, it's a spiritual indicator. Peter is not endorsing perfection in leadership, he's revealing alignment in the believer. The shock? Your submission is not first about who is over you, it's about who you belong to. This creates immediate tension. Can I submit, even when I don't agree? Because submission tests trust, another question presses deeper. Is my resistance rooted in righteousness, or in pride? Because not all resistance is justified. And here's the internal conflict. I want control, but God calls me to trust His order. This is a right now posture decision. Choose alignment. Submit with the awareness that God sees. Respond with respect, not reaction. Trust God's sovereignty over imperfect systems. Because your response reflects your trust. Submission is not about losing power, it's about revealing trust. And your response says more than your words ever could. So here's the question you must face. Are you submitting for the Lord's sake, or resisting for your own? Because how you respond right now is revealing who truly has authority in your life. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 14, KJV, or unto governors, as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. Peter narrows the focus. Submission isn't abstract, it's specific. Governors, local authorities, have a God-allowed role: restrain evil and recognize good. Even when imperfect, authority functions as a structure for order. Here's the contrast. Authority can be flawed, yet still serves a God-permitted purpose. The hidden truth. Order is a gift, even when the system isn't perfect. Without it, chaos replaces accountability. The shock? You're called to respect a role, even when you question the person in it. This creates tension. Do I only respect authority when I agree with it? Because conditional respect reveals conditional submission. Another question presses deeper. Do I see authority as God's tool for order, or just an obstacle to my preferences? And here's the internal conflict. I want justice, but resist the structures meant to uphold it. Right now, choose a steady posture. Respect the role, even when you wrestle with the person. Do good consistently, don't mirror dysfunction. Let your conduct align with God's purpose, not culture's reaction. Because order honors God, even when it's imperfectly administered. Authority may be imperfect, but chaos is costly. And how you respond determines what you reflect. So here's the question you must answer. Are you contributing to order, or reacting in ways that create more disorder? Because your response right now is shaping more than a moment, it's shaping your witness. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 15, KJV, for so is the will of God, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. Peter makes it unmistakable. This is God's will, not preference, not opinion. Your consistent, visible good works are meant to silence false accusations. You don't win this battle with arguments, you win it with conduct. Here's the contrast. Words defend your position. Actions validate your faith. The hidden truth. Your lifestyle is your loudest message. People may question what you believe, but they cannot ignore how you live. The shock? The most effective response to criticism is not louder speech, it's better living. This creates immediate tension. Am I trying to prove my faith with words, while my life says something else? Because inconsistency weakens witness. Another question presses deeper. Do my actions silence confusion, or create more of it? And here's the internal conflict. I want to defend truth, but God is calling me to demonstrate it. Right now, shift your focus. Prioritize consistent, visible goodness. Let your life answer what your words cannot. Choose integrity when it's hardest. Because credibility is built through conduct. You don't silence confusion by arguing louder, you silence it by living clearer. So here's the question you must face. Is your life strengthening your message, or weakening it? Because what people see in you may determine what they believe about God. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 16, KJV, as free, and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. Peter now addresses a dangerous misunderstanding. Freedom in Christ is real, but it is not permission to live without restraint. You are free, but not independent from God's authority. Here's the contrast. Freedom used for self right-pointing arrow leads to misuse. Freedom used for God right-pointing arrow leads to purpose. The hidden truth. How you use your freedom reveals who you serve. Freedom can either reflect God's character or hide selfish intent. The shock? You can claim freedom and still be spiritually misaligned. Freedom without submission becomes disguised rebellion. This creates deep tension. Am I using my freedom to serve God or to justify what I want? Because freedom tests motives, another question presses deeper. Have I called something freedom that God would call disobedience? And here's the internal conflict. I want liberty, but God calls me to responsibility. Right now, realign your freedom. Use your freedom to serve, not excuse. Let your choices reflect God's authority. Reject anything that disguises selfishness as liberty. Because true freedom is found in alignment, not independence. You are free, but not your own. And how you live that freedom reveals everything. So here's the question you can't ignore. Are you walking in freedom, or hiding behind it? Because the freedom you misuse today can quietly distance you from the God who gave it. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 17, KJV, honor all men. Love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Peter closes with 4 commands that reorder life's priorities. Honor people, love believers, fear God, honor authority. It's a complete framework, horizontal relationships shaped by vertical reverence. Here's the contrast. Honor all men right-pointing arrow broad respect. Fear God right-pointing arrow ultimate allegiance. You respect people, but you revere God. You honor the king, but you don't replace God with him. The hidden truth. Proper order protects your identity. When God is rightly feared, everything else falls into place. When he isn't, everything else becomes distorted. The shock? You can honor authority publicly, and still dishonor God privately. Peter refuses that separation. This creates immediate tension. Is my life properly ordered, or am I honoring the wrong things most? Because what you prioritize reveals what you value. Another question presses deeper. Do I show respect outwardly, but lack reverence inwardly? And here's the internal conflict. I want to be respected, but God calls me to live reverently. Right now, realign your priorities. Show respect to all people. Love God's people intentionally. Keep your reverence for God central. Honor authority without replacing God. Because order determines direction. Honor people, but fear God. Respect authority, but belong to him. So here's the question you must answer. Is your life ordered around God, or everything else? Because what sits at the center of your life is shaping every decision you make right now. Absolutely. Here are cinematic, high-impact visual prompts for your full lesson. Hook, history, each scripture set, and final summary. Designed for YouTube, Canva, AI video with strong contrast, symbolism, and spiritual depth. This lesson brings everything into focus. Authority is not ultimate, God is. Jesus teaches that while we have responsibilities in earthly systems, our identity and allegiance belong to him. Paul reveals that authority exists under God's sovereignty, and Peter shows that our response to authority reflects our witness. Here's the contrast. Earthly authority is temporary. God's authority is eternal. You may live under systems, but you belong to God. The hidden truth. How you respond to authority reveals who you recognize as Lord. You can comply outwardly and still resist inwardly. But true alignment is not just behavior, it's heart posture. This creates unavoidable tension. Do I submit to God fully, or only when it aligns with my preferences? Another question presses deeper. Is my resistance rooted in conviction, or in control? And here's the internal conflict. I want freedom, but God calls me to surrender. Because real freedom is not independence, it's alignment. This is a right now decision. Honor authority as part of God's order. Live responsibly in everyday actions. Let love guide your interactions. Use your freedom to serve, not justify. Keep God at the center of all allegiance. Because your response is your witness. You may live under authority, but you belong to God. So here's the question you must answer. Who truly has authority in your life right now? Because how you respond, in this moment, is revealing who you actually serve.